Welcome to Alpine Daily for Tuesday. And what we've been doing on Tuesdays recently is we've been just sharing some thoughts from Galatians. I've been studying this in my own life, and so I wanted to share with you just a little bit from each chapter each week. And so today we're in chapter 3. Our theme is, how do we live the Christian life? How do we go about trying to please God with our lives and to follow Him? And the lesson of chapter 3 is we really live the very same way that we began the Christian life. So let's take a look at Galatians chapter 3. We're going to read the first several verses, starting in verse 1, and I'll comment as we go along. He says, "You foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you?" There was something going on there he was concerned about. They seem to have lost their senses. They're following something crazy. He says, "Before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified." In other words, we taught you about the message of the cross and all of its significance. So they seem to be having lost that. He says, "I'd like to learn just one thing from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by believing what you heard?" He says, how did you start the Christian life? How did you come to know this, receive the Spirit, to be born again? Was it by keeping the law and doing all these righteous things, or by believing this good news message that we shared with you? The implication is the latter. And so he says that we began the Christian life by faith alone, not by works. And then he goes on to say, look, are you so foolish? After beginning by means of the Spirit, are you now trying to finish by means of the flesh, meaning by our own personal efforts? Have you experienced so much in vain, if it really was in vain? So I ask you, does God give you the Spirit and work miracles among you by the works of the law, or by believing what you heard? See, he keeps coming back to that again, and he's pointing out that we started by faith alone, and we live the Christian life the same way, by faith alone, in God's resources alone. He says that God's resources come to us by faith, not by the flesh, not by trying really hard, and that God's power is released in our lives by faith. He says, you've experienced the Spirit, you've experienced miracles, not by trying to keep all the rules and regulations of the law, but by believing in the resources that God has promised you. And so here's how that might work in practice. Let's say there's something in your life that you'd like to really see it changed, and you wonder if God, a habit maybe, or some kind of a besetting sin, and so you can go about it by the law. You can make all kinds of rules and regulations and try to keep those rules and say, every day I'm going to do this, and then I'm not going to do this. Or you can do it by believing what you've heard, believing the good news of God's grace, and to say God's power at work in you, to overcome the temptation and to make the right choice, to be able to do differently than you've done before by relying on God's power rather than by trying to set up and keep a bunch of rules and regulations to govern your relationship with God. That's what he means by continuing by faith, just as we began by faith. And so you might want to think about some things you could pray about here today. You could pause the video and look at these prayer ideas and interact with God a little bit today about how you are living your Christian life. Have a wonderful day. God richly bless you.